Well, welcome to this series on hope-filled living in turbulent times. And in this particular session, we want to focus on this idea of the need to relate and not react to things. As we know, things are really stressful right now, and there's a lot to react to going on in our world. And there's a lot to react to going on inside of us in a lot of ways too. And we kind of feel both of those pulls a lot of the times to just react to whatever we saw on social media, to react to what we saw on the news, or even to just react interpersonally in relationships, to just miss that opportunity to really connect and relate. And you guys would know that we've been pretty involved with a lot of student ministry things going on around the nation. And as we've been trying to help continue to raise the emotional health, relational health of high school students around the country, we've been really pouring a lot of work into research, into understanding this generation and what's going on there. And just last year I was coming across a report that Barna put out and just saw some stats on there that jumped at me when I was going through this. In that report on what they call the connected generation, so that 18 to 35-year-old range, which I fall into, said that of that group of folks, 77% of them would say that global events, things going on in the world, matter to me. I care about that. I feel that. I see that. I care about that. And yet right under that is a line that says, of that same group though, only 33% would identify with the statement that says, I often consistently feel cared for by others. And it was one of those things that just jumped at me of going, okay, here's a group of people, and again, myself included, I think we often get kind of coined or tagged as like the social justice generation, or being so aware of how can we make our lives count in those ways, which is beautiful, so good. It highlights, though, this gap that exists between I see what's going on in the world, I care about that, we need to do something about that, but that lower number of 33% feeling cared for would, to me, indicate that I don't have the personal experience to know how to do anything about it and how to care about it. How do I go serve into that space? And it's this really interesting time that we live in. Like, y'all would be so aware. I feel like emotional health and emotional wellness they're becoming buzzwords in culture right now. Like, everybody's really talking about that, which is good. But it's still that question of, just because we can identify an issue, does that mean we're actually really solving it and speaking to it and addressing it in really meaningful ways? And it's really interesting how culture just continues to pull further and further back from relating. And not to throw companies under the bus, but just examples that I was thinking about for this conversation could be things like, Amazon grocery stores, or these concepts where you can go get products without talking to human beings. There's another thing, as you guys know, I was in an Uber recently. There's an option to where you can actually click, I don't want to talk to my driver. And it communicates that to them ahead of time. And again, this isn't about starting fights with those companies or trying to make this a big thing. But I think, again, what I'm continuing to notice in our culture right now is we're becoming more and more and more aware of our need. But yet we don't always often connect the dots to the things that we're doing that are actually pushing us further away from the goal and the need that we have of relating with real people. And so I feel this a lot right now in our culture, and I know you guys do as well. And so, Terry, maybe I could just ask you to share your thoughts, impressions to that, and maybe a story that comes to mind just on this idea of we really need to relate, right?
I was reminded as we were thinking about this topic of, I used to teach elementary school, and there was all kinds of turbulence just from the fact that I was trying to manage 9 and 10-year-olds and 28 of them in one classroom, and then I was actually teaching during a time of desegregation, and so the racial tension was especially a big problem at that point. And so the tension in our school was palpable. You could just feel it. And I remember this one particular year that one of my fourth graders was a kid named Andrew, and Andrew and I, were having a tough time, and I was really tempted on a daily basis to react to the turbulence of the culture and the school and the classroom, and then, some of the behavior that was happening at Andrew's desk. And so I was really struggling with all of that and was tempted to react often. And I was talking to my dad one day, and after I was venting about all of that, and Andrew shouldn't be doing this and shouldn't be doing that and shouldn't be doing this, and he looked at me and asked me a question I'll never forget it. He looked at me and he said, "Well, what do you think Andrew needs?" And it stumped me. And
he needs to behave,
Yeah.
right?
That's what
Get
I
in
said.
line.
I was like, I'm not proud of this, but I said, well, he needs to stop acting up in my classroom.
Right. Right.
And I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. And so what my dad began to really patiently explain is that Andrew needed someone to relate to him. And because of things at home and because of just the way things were rolling in our school and in our society right then, Andrew needed a lot of acceptance. And Andrew needed a lot of security. And that was something that I could learn how to do and how to relate to him in ways. And learning those relating skills really helped Andrew, but more me, know how to not react, but to relate. And I was even reading, Matt, a particular research study, and we're way too early in the process to know all about the being at home and how it's impacting our kids. But I was reading this one research study and talking about teens, and there was a significant portion of them between 2018 and 2020, and some of them had some lessened depression actually after being at home more. But the keys were they're at home more, so they got more sleep. But the other factor was when they said, hey, those relationships, when I'm with my family and I'm feeling connected to my family, I'm feeling less lonely and depressed.
Wow.
And so, that just really underscored to me this principle of the importance of relating. So, Dad, I know one of the big factors in this is we have to look at what are the external forces or internal forces that are at play here. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I've been just thinking, listening to that story though, Matt. Full disclosure, again, when early years she's teaching school, which was a couple of decades ago, I guess, or so. Anyway, I had moved on from my education in nuclear physics and in computer science to studying counseling, to then working on a PhD in a couple of fields. And I was kind of practicing this stuff at home, is what I was doing. So when I began to talk about, well, what does Andrew need? And it's gotten me a lot of trouble at home, trust me. And yet it kind of put us on a path of the importance of relating to people, and not reacting. And we're in a time where that's critically important. If we look at some of the painful stats of, divorce seems to be on the rise, domestic violence on the rise, addictions, depressions, some numbers in suicide. It's really challenging, and it highlights the importance, as you've alluded to, for us to look beyond ourselves to where can I relate. And I think you rightly pointed out there's this kind of need to relate, and yet from some of the stats you gave, kind of this inadequacy of, well, how do I do it?
Right.
And in some of the work that you've been leading in with high school students, I know you've seen some really, really progress in just equipping them with the adequacy of what do the sentences sound like to give encouragement or to communicate acceptance or to, communicate respect. And I really applaud those younger generations in that once they have that adequacy, they're really empowered to actually utilize it, and in a really exciting way, in a really hopeful way to a guy that has a few decades on him, let's say. And so I really appreciate you bringing that up, but also appreciate your contributions in that regard. Terry, to your point about this idea of, kind of how do we increase the relating in these kind of turbulent times? It really kind of relates to this principle. In the counseling terms, it would be the use of the word intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation has to do with self-motivation. In other words, me being self-motivated to accomplish things. And what we're going to talk about is you cannot self-motivate yourself out of a pandemic, okay? Or you can't self-motivate yourself out of fearful times. Terry, you might have, I know I probably did as a father, occasionally in a irrelevant way say to my kids, stop being afraid, or whatever. I mean, you just can't self-motivate a child. They can't motivate themselves out of being afraid of the dark, right? And so what's going on is intrinsic motivation has to do with those things that I can control, as we talked a little bit about locus of control. So we might practice this, and then we're going to contrast that with extrinsic motivation, external motivation. So intrinsic motivation means, I've got a goal to lose another 8 pounds so I can confound my family doctor, that didn't think I could. And so I'm looking forward to smacking him around with my success. So I use that as an example of an intrinsic motivation, is that I actually can control that. I've over time not done a good job of controlling that, but I do have control of that. So that might be good for each of you to just reflect on what's a goal that you actually do have some control over that you might share, and then we may get our audience to do the same thing.
Yeah, one that comes to mind for me would be actually both, I guess 2 of them real quick would be, I would like to exercise more. I'm finding that it's easy to kind of get into this victim mentality of life's busy, life's so hard, I can't do it, I can't do these things. And you realize a lot of the times they're just bogus excuses, and you make time for what you value. And I need to be more committed to that, because that's something I can control, as well as I've got a goal to reach out to more folks that I kind of coach and mentor in life. And so I've set reminders on my phone every Monday and every Wednesday, I think it is, that just dings and it goes, call XYZ person.
No, that's good.
And just to stay connected. And so that's something that even from a distance, or maybe not always being in the same context as we used to be, that is something I can control, and that is something that I can contribute towards being more connected and relating.
Good goals. How about you, Terry?
Yeah, for me, it's more of I want to make sure that I am outside more time during my week. I've realized that I spend a lot of my time indoors, and if I'm not careful, I can get really preoccupied with work. I can be indoors at home with chores there, and yet when I'm spending more outside time, then I exercise more. It helps my emotional health. I'm usually there with other people, and so there's more relational connection. And so, yeah, that's something I can control, is being outside more.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's a great time to be outside. Weather's cooling off.
Yeah.
Great time to walk
I know.
around. So it's awesome. Why don't you take the next few minutes to chat that answer yourself? What are some things that you can control? What are some things that you can actually contribute to your wellness in these ways? Press pause, chat, whatever that is for your setting right now, but have that quick discussion. Okay, so that was a really good conversation around this topic of intrinsic stressors and having a focus on what are these things that I can control and the things that I can contribute towards. And we also want to have this conversation around extrinsic stressors and these things that are going on in the world that we're experiencing, and particularly with a focus and emphasis on relationships are such a big part of us actually dealing with these stressors and being connected to other people in these ways. And so, David, maybe you could kind of walk us through a little bit of what does that look like to be aware of these extrinsic stressors and how human relationships and getting outside of ourselves and looking for things beyond ourselves is really a big part of this growth.
Yeah, for sure. So the principle has to do with this idea of where is the motivation. And so you can't just, again, as I said earlier, say to yourself, don't be worried, don't be afraid. What we need is external motivation. And that external motivation comes from relationships. And so now if there ever was a need to relate, don't react, it's now. Anytime there's turbulent times, we need to increase our relational connection. So for example, just again, total vulnerability here. So when I come home and my wife is stressed out, anxious about no telling what, that some friend has said or she's watched on TV or whatever, and you haven't got to this yet, Matt, but you will one of these days in your married life, and she is rearranging all the furniture in the house, okay? That is one of those that in times past, in my past life, I could have reacted to, let's just say, rather than realize, I think she might have been bored, Terry. I think your mom might have been bored when she gets bored. I don't know what. I think I've heard you, when you get bored, you clean things or straighten things. Is that right?
I do.
Your mom has some of that too. And so it's either straighten things, clean things, rearrange furniture, whatever. But it's been a wake-up call to me that says, I think my wife needs some external motivation by me relating better to her. Like, honey, you want to go for a walk tomorrow morning? And that kind of calms down the furniture rearrangement. Right? So what we need during this time is to increase that relational connection with people nearest us, beginning with those nearest us. All right. So I'm walking more with my wife, okay, than I ever have my whole life, and I think I only started this year. So it hadn't been a long life. Never too late. So we need that, I've been, over these last 6 or 8 months, I've just been, like you mentioned, Matt, just kind of diligent during my kind of quiet times in the morning before I leave them. I'm just kind of flipping through in alphabetical order in my contact list.
That's cool.
And just kind of feeling impressed of a little text message of encouragement, or just I'm thinking about you, or have you on my mind, to a few people every morning to just increase that sense of relational connection. I got one yesterday, Terry, from one of our friends in Ohio, who we haven't spoken to or been with him in probably 18 months, but just Jeff reached out to say, hey, just on my mind, and want you to know I'm thinking about you, love you a lot, look forward to being together on the other side of this thing. So I think increasing those relational connections really important part of reducing the stress during these turbulent times. And that kind of begs the question then of, well, what do people need, or kind of what do I most need? And we actually have a really cool instrument called the Motivation Keys Check-In. That basically says different people are kind of externally motivated in different ways, right? For example, your mom, my wife, I've learned after a few decades, she's motivated when someone kind of takes thought of her and kind of enters into her world, what she enjoys doing. So when I miraculously say, would you like to go for a walk tomorrow morning, that is powerfully motivating to her. But different people are motivated in different ways. And that's what this Motivational Keys Check-In will help you in. So we're going to encourage that you actually take that yourself, maybe share that with some family and friends, and have those kind of conversations. Some people are motivated, even on our team, Matt and Terry, as you know, they're motivated by kind of words of encouragement.
Sure.
Of you've got this, man, you can handle it. Some people are, more motivated when we ask their opinion, when you do one of your whiteboard sessions, infamously here in the building, and say, you know, hey, what kind of ideas do you have? And people are motivated by getting to contribute their ideas. And so learning how I am most motivated, okay, externally by relationships is very important. And then to understand that about the people around us, maybe the teams that we're on, or roommates, you know, or those in our own families, very important. So we might try that for each of us, kind of give it an example, and then maybe, Matt, you can encourage our audience to do the same.
Yeah.
So on these motivational check-ins, there's actually 10 we've identified that are very unique. And for me, probably the one that motivates is one when I sense that someone cares about our relationship kind of more than the project we're working on, or more than the task that needs to get done. So it's just kind of like, you know, they care about the relationship. That was what was so encouraging from Jeff yesterday, to just kind of cares about the relationship. You know, we've done a lot of things together. We've done a lot of events together. We worked on some book projects together. But the message didn't have anything to do with projects or events. It just, you know, just he cares about the relationship. So that really motivates me, and kind of motivates me to, you know, want to give back and to care for other people. So how about y'all?
That's cool. Well, I guess I'll go because mine's actually really similar to, I was looking at this list here, and just that idea of makes time for me and desires to relationally connect and care enter the world beyond, like you said, the projects, the performance, the goals, the targets, and of course those are critical. But I've noticed over the years, various places I've worked, teams I've worked on, my level of commitment, sacrifice, pressing through hard things is just infinite with those relationships that I feel like I matter to them beyond simply what I do or don't do. And so that sense of making time for me, wanting to really know how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, not just how was the weekend, but how's it, no, seriously, how's it going? Like, what's going on with you? How's your heart? How's your mind? How's your headspace right now? And just actually connect in that way creates such motivation to continue to give to the relationship and then serve the relationship. And now I care about what you care about now, and I want to serve into the vision that you have for this, because I feel like I matter in that way, and that means a lot.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. In fact, that's a great point there of why this is so important to kind of know, and then, as you just said, kind of care and serve other people, because it actually is kind of contagious. Okay, I mean, when I'm doing 3 or 4 texts each morning, undoubtedly, at least 1 or 2 times that day, I'm going to hear back from 1 or more of those people. Right. You know, some words of encouragement, some words of appreciation or something. So you have kind of this contagious caring and relating to one another. And the beautiful part about that, Terry, before you give your example, is anytime we're focused upon caring for other people, whether it's me walking my wife or text in the morning to people in my contact list, we're taking the focus off of ourselves and the stresses around us. And that intuitively, instinctively reduces stress.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so as you've alluded to, you can't be kind of fearful and anxious and caring at the same time, you know, in essence. So that's why that is really so important. So how about you, Terry? Which one of these motivation keys might be your most commonly experienced one?
Yeah, mine is the one where I feel really motivated when somebody joins me and is with me in whatever the project is, whatever the need to get done thing is. It's no matter if the task is humongously big, if somebody's in it with me, I'm more confident, I feel more capable, I feel more motivated. You know, as long as I know you're in it with me, I'm good. Yeah. It's the not alone part that is really motivating to me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're gonna later in our times together, we'll talk a little bit about that need. Sometimes we put the word support on it, but the key to that is you're not alone.
Right.
and that's really key. So Matt, why don't you invite our folks to just kind of take this little check-in, but before they do that, maybe chat some of their responses.
Sure.
Might be helpful to understand
Sure.
how unique we are and how unique you are from maybe your family members or friends who may be, or a group that's watching this with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even to that point, as we encourage you all to chat your answers and throw that out there, what we hope you see as you start seeing all of these, whether you do numbers or actually type it out, we hope you see that other people have motivations too. So as you get in touch with how I'm motivated, that sense of self-awareness there, hopefully it does encourage us and stir us to go, oh, well, maybe Terry's motivated a certain way, and maybe I should care to figure out what that is and then go do something about that, right? So take the next few minutes to chat that, have that discussion about how you're best motivated.
To further explore this topic of relating and not reacting, we've mentioned this idea that, Matt, we've got to be adequate in how to relate, right? That's
right.
what you're running into with high school students. I don't even know how, I'm hungering for it. I'm longing to relate. Terry, I'm longing not to be alone or isolated. Sometimes the high school students will call it.
Sure.
But how do I relate? Well, we've just talked about one of the ways we relate to one another, particularly during turbulent times, is through kind of knowing how to best care for this person. And we care for them by your need for support, as we've talked about, Terry, your need for someone to kind of enter into, what's going on with Matt, conversations. And so that's a part of the adequacy of being able to relate. And it's one of the things that'll keep us from reacting, right? In other words, what kept me finally from not reacting to all my wife's symptoms of her being bored, I mean, I always realized it wasn't doing me any good to react to her. It was kind of going downhill every time. But I was inadequate as to, well, what else do I say? What else do I do? And say, oh, why don't you mention, let's go for a walk tomorrow. And sure enough, it worked. So that idea of knowing and then caring about what this other person needs is very important. And in our next little segment, Terry, you're going to talk about another important issue of adequacy. And it has to do with hope-filled conversations. And we hate to admit it, but we may be around people a lot during stress-filled times, but they may or may not be filled with hope,
That's true.
And so sometimes we need to be more adequate into how do we have real uplifting, hope-filled conversations.
Yeah.
So help us with that, and we'll practice that with you.
Okay. Yeah, in order to live in these turbulent times, one of the practical things that we can do is to engage in what you just described as hope-filled conversations. And that means that I can't control some of those external stressors that are all around me, but I can control what I talk about with people. And so if we want to live our lives with more hope, then I need to talk about things that are hopeful. So what we want to do is we want you to think about, and we're going to practice this in just a second, we're going to have a conversation that is future focused. That's what hope is all about. It's things that we can't wait for. We envision a future and want it to be. And it doesn't have to be big deals and big dreams and goals. It can be very actually simple. But it's the future focus that really helps reduce the stress. So, as we said, you can't be hopeful and fearful at the same time. But what we can do is just think about, for this little moment of your life, what's something that you're next looking forward to? Or that you just kind of look at that vision for the future, even if it's a small one, and you just can't wait for it, right? And so I want you to think about this kind of on the other side of some of the stresses you're going through. What's something that you can't wait for? And as we share, what we're about to do is we're gonna share this in just a minute. And as our audience members share, they're gonna talk about how they would finish that sentence of, I'm looking forward to, or I can't wait to. They're going to finish that. And then when somebody does this kind of conversation, you not only want to share the response to that prompt, but you need to know what to say back.
Yeah.
Right? Like you need to know how to relate.
That's
in
what we call
healthy
a
way.
conversation, right?
It is. Like you got to go, it's a two-way thing. It's a two-way thing. So when somebody shares this kind of conversation, we can relate in one of three ways. We can celebrate, of sharing some positive emotion in return. Hey, wow, that's amazing. I'm so glad. That's you're looking forward to that. No wonder you want to do that. So that's one way we can celebrate. Second thing is we can listen for and talk about our common interests. I call this one as kind of you're listening for your Me Too moment of when somebody shares something they're looking forward to, it's, oh, wow, me too. I'm totally joining you in that. I get that too. So you're looking for a common interest. And then the third thing is if somebody shares something they're looking forward to, in some of our stories, there are moments where that story might contain something sad or disappointing or challenging or hurtful. And you don't want to ignore that and just skim over it. For instance, we had somebody that we love share something recently about, hey, I'm looking forward to when lots of the stress going on in our world passes, and the loved one that passed away several months ago, we get to have a celebration service of her life.
Wow.
That's not something you celebrate, and that's not something you find a common interest in necessarily. Well, so how do you respond? Well, you respond with comfort and some care in that way. And so as we and as our audience is about to do, I'm going to share that response of what I'm looking forward to or what I can't wait for. And then you listen for which one of those three responses do I say in return.
That's good.
All right, so let's practice this. We're going to practice for live and in the moment because we're all about equipping around here. So, so Matt, what are you looking forward to or like you can't wait for?
Awesome. I get to have a fun one. Okay, I'm literally smiling right now thinking about this. It's working. I'm already being hope-filled. I can't wait for three things. One is to get to go back to movie theaters. I know it's a dying art industry right now. All your Gen Z, they're all Netflix and everything, which is great. I love theaters though, so I love going. Can't wait till those open back up. Can't wait for concerts to happen. We live in obviously Austin, Texas, live capital of the world. And then the third one is I just bought season tickets. Austin just got its first soccer team here. And as you all know, we don't have a lot of professional sporting things around here. And so it's really fun and I'm excited for it. And I just hope everything clears out one day to where we can actually have a season and do it. So I'm assuming all that happens. I'm really excited about getting back to those crowd gathering, energetic, fun, event-driven kinds of things like that.
All I can do is celebrate for Matt. I mean, I'm excited. You're excited for
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
I don't share that common interest as a more of the introvert among us here. I'm not looking forward to crowds of people and all that kind of thing. But I just celebrate.
I
for you.
appreciate that. I
I
receive
know
it.
how much that means to you,
Yes.
and I hear you're grieving during this time without it.
Yes.
So I celebrate. You're going to be able to experience that soon.
Yes, thank you. I'm literally looking forward to it.
All right, great response, great celebration. All right, so Dad, what are you looking forward to, or you can't wait to?
You know, again, full disclosure here, you know, I've mentioned that one of the earlier times that I've looked forward to going to a restaurant where someone takes my order and brings me my food. That's kind of self-interested as I reflect on it. So let me see if I can improve that a little bit. I'm actually really looking forward to getting on airplanes that go visit people that I really care about and I miss a lot. You know, we have made trips to, 50, 60 different countries of the world, and we got friends in all those countries that we love and really just miss them. Your emails and your FaceTimes and all that just didn't make up for it, And so I'm just really looking forward to going to some friends in Europe, in Africa, the Middle East, that we've really, really missed. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, Dad, when I hear that, I was thinking yesterday was one of your first trips in a really long time. I think maybe in decades. You haven't gone this long
Right.
without having trips away and seeing people. And so, I really share that common interest with you of that's totally a Me Too thing of, man, we need to go see people that we love and care about. And I really get that with you of it's time to go.
Yeah.
My last time on an airplane was with you and your family going to Madison's kind of graduation experience in New York City.
That's right.
And then everything shuts down and hadn't been on a plane since.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, that's an absolute Me Too.
I'm glad you share that common with me.
Yep.
It's great.
Well, one of the things I'm looking forward to, kind of related to the travel, is Matt, as you know, and Dad, as you know, one of the real special things about our family we've had the privilege to do is do some overseas trips every summer to Africa and to help with some orphans in Zambia. And so I totally share the going to see the kids I care about in Zambia.
Yeah.
And but what was especially just pointed for me was this particular orphanage set up a Zoom call with the kids, one of the kids that I sponsor. And so I actually got to talk to her on Zoom.
Wow.
And her little 12-year-old face is right there.
Wow.
And that was amazing. But what was really hard was that I'm really looking forward to seeing her in person. And she looked at me on Zoom and she said, Auntie Terry, when are you coming to see me? I feel good when I talk to you. And her 12-year-old self just doesn't understand
Sure.
how difficult. She just knows that what we do every year, we've had to miss.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing Natasha.
Oh, I know that must have been heart-wrenching for you. You got such a tender heart. God's given you a real love for those kids. And I know that must have been kind of a sad moment, kind of mixed emotions for you.
Absolutely.
So I do have a lot of compassion for you about that and look forward to that changing soon. Hopefully soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for sharing.
Terry, I was connecting with that same sense of mixed emotions. What a joy to get to FaceTime and even have that ability.
Yeah.
And yet, like you said, to have to look into someone's face and eyes and just see the disconnect of, we can't make it happen, plus having to forego the trip that you were going to do this summer that you normally do to get to connect is hard and is painful in a lot of ways. And I'm really sorry you're walking through that, as well as hopeful and looking forward to the day you get to go back.
Hey, you guys are pretty good at relating.
Oh,
Pretty good
good.
at relating.
Good. I hope so.
I feel better.
All right, we really want all of you to do the very same exercise. So spend a moment with the friends or family members that you are connected to and share this same prompt. On the other side of the stresses that we're all enduring, what are some things that you're looking forward to, like you can't wait for? And then as you share, be sure to be listening for whether or not you're going to celebrate, whether you're going to share common interests or whether you're going to give some words of comfort. So share and then give one of those 3 relating responses. And parents, if you're doing this with your kids, and we really encourage you to do that, be sure to go first and kind of model for them what it sounds like. So they can do this too. You might talk to them about hope, of what you're looking forward to is the things we can't wait to do in the future. And then model for them what it looks like and sounds like, and then do this as a family. This would be a great way to relate.
David and Terry, this has been a really fun conversation, actually trying to grow some of our adequacy in these areas, right? That's kind of how we started this conversation, was around, we feel it, we feel the need, we feel the desire, but we don't always know exactly how to step into that and how to care for that. And Terry, I love that exercise that we just wrapped up this time doing by doing something so simple. It didn't require this elaborate, loud, or long conversation. It was just heartfelt. It was just meeting heart to heart in a lot of ways. And I think that those are really practical and simple ways that we can increase connection, which is ultimately helping us relate to each other and not react. And that's what we want to continue to do. As we lower our stress in those ways by relating, by making more human connections, we are strengthening these relationships. And so as you all just continue to process this material, we'd love to encourage you to think about doing some of those exercises with your loved ones, with your friends, with your coworkers, with whoever. Maybe take a break, take a step back from the busy work, the constant going, and try to think about and assess, who could we relate with today? Who could we actually take time to stop getting things done and reacting to whatever we saw on social media, to whatever we saw on the news, and actually connect with people and relate. And so maybe that's sending a text message to somebody, like David talked about, like I shared a little bit as well, of who am I just going to rhythmically connect with? As well as we'd love for you to take the Motivational Keys check-in that you have access to there in your material, to know what is it that truly does motivate you and those around you, right? Give it to your spouse, give it to your roommates, give it to your friends. Begin to know how those around you are truly motivated. And then the last thing we'd love to just put a wrap on this is just that emphasis on the importance of conversation, the two-way street nature of this, of people are walking around with a story, people are walking around with stress, and in order to increase that connection and to increase that sense of relationship, we've got to actually take the time to hear, to ask questions, and then appropriately respond, appropriately engage that conversation to move forward in hope-filled thinking and hope-filled living. And so thank you for joining us for this session.